Hello and welcome to my spoiler review for Barbie. Where to begin? This movie is just jam-packed. It's one of the things that I think makes the greatest impression on you when you first see it, and why it's the kind of movie that I think will do very well from repeat business, because you're like, I gotta see this again. Now, I think we all know how good the movie is, but I think where it would be a good place to start is how smart Barbie is. Everybody who sees it walks out saying Oscar contender, which I think probably seems ridiculous to people who haven't seen the movie. And I also think that when you first see the film, you get that inkling, but there's so much to unpack that you're not quite sure why it's a strong awards contender. Or you see some of why it is, but not the full picture. So I've pondered Barbie, and I have, I think, a very complete breakdown of, again, why the movie is just so smart. So, of course, on the surface, there's America Ferrera's character's powerful monologue about how women have to try to navigate society. And again, it is very powerful. One of you sent me a story about your screening where you said all the women in your screening leapt to their feet after that monologue and applauded. What a beautiful moment that must have been. And I'm sure Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie in particular, well, Noah Baumbach and Ryan Gosling too, are so happy to hear that some people are having that response. But that, again, is just the surface. There is so much more. So, as some of you might have noticed, the movie is the opposite of 1960s America, which is when Barbie was introduced, by the way, in 1959. In Barbie land, women have all the power, while men work to get their attention for validation and purpose. Who are the cheerleaders? Men, while women are the athletes. And I can see why that visual might, if you don't see it in context and try to understand why it's being done, some men might be put off by that. But what's really going on is that it's like walk a mile in someone else's shoes to see what it's like. And that's what Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, by the way, who co-wrote the script, are trying to do. They're like, it's one thing to have someone explain it to you, but it's quite another to experience it. So that's what I think one of the great things is about flipping the gender roles on their head in Barbie land. And this is further hammered home at the end of the movie when the Barbies decide that they're going to include the Kens, that pushing Ken aside has been wrong. Not allowing Kens to participate in society was wrong, which is a lot like how the women's movement got started, women's civil rights. And that's what's going to happen to the Kens. They say, can we please have one justice on the Supreme Court? And the Barbies say, you can work your way up with the lower courts. And that's exactly what women had to do. In fact, women are still working. Men and women are still not equal to this day, despite the women's movement starting in the 1970s. I think that's just the point that's trying to be made. If you think the Kens should instantly be put on par with the Barbies, well, think about that. Then shouldn't women in the real world be instantly put on par with the men? And brilliantly, by making a Ken a major character and casting the charismatic and very game Ryan Gosling, who takes all of this very seriously, which is crucial to his performance. Men get to see how women have long felt with this flipping of the gender roles, but the movie also highlights that men and women are still different, that they are still very different. Men and women are not the same in this movie, just like they aren't in real life. But both have feelings, and both deserve to be heard and live their best life, which I think is commendable. Some people, sometimes feminism is more aggressive, and this movie could have taken that path, but it didn't. This movie very much wants everyone to be happy, which I think is very healthy. And that life should, by the way, not be defined by a significant other. That's another crucial aspect to this movie, but there's a very specific reason as to why they did it. And it's not because the movie's anti-men. First of all, just because Barbie isn't interested in her Ken, the stereotypical Ken that's supposed to match with her, doesn't mean she's not interested in men. In fact, who she likes isn't important right now, because like the little girls who play with Barbie herself is more interested in figuring out who she is and what she wants out of life first. And she urges Ken to do the same. She doesn't tell Ken to wait for her. She's like, Ken, go out and find out who you are. And romance will come later. Barbie is a child's toy, and so is Ken. And I think you need to realize that that's what the movie is reflecting, and as well as the childish ideals that both Barbie Land and Kendom, I'm going to get to that a little bit more later, but I want to bring it up here, represent. And that I think that is something that dawned on me only after I thought about the film for a little bit. Now, the first hint that I got about that was the end of the movie, which I also think is brilliant. When I'd heard from my sources that the movie ended in a gynecologist's office, I had thought the movie was saying that Barbie was only a real woman if she was going to have a child. And I couldn't believe this movie would make that statement. But it's not. Instead, they're focusing on women's health and that all women go to the gynecologist when they come of age for a variety of reasons. Again, it's really more under the category of women's health. Of course, having a baby is part of that, but it's only a part of it. And at the end of the movie, that's what Barbie does. This is amazing. She grows up. She doesn't just become human. It's really a metaphor for a little girl having played with Barbie and then being ready to grow up. Isn't that just amazing? That's so beautiful. Leaving, as I said, the childish idealism of Barbie Land behind. And that's why she takes on the more grown-up name of Barbara Handler, which is not only the surname of Barbie's creator, but the real life name of Ruth Handler's daughter, Barbara Handler. She could have kept going by Barbie. She could have gone into the office and said, hey, I'm Barbie Handler. But she said, I'm Barbara Handler, because again, she was growing up. And I just think that that's just so beautiful. And no, the movie isn't anti-mom either. I've seen that complaint about the film. In fact, it's a mom who's been playing with Barbie, America Ferrera's character, that has started all this, thinking about her times with her own daughter, revisiting her own childhood, and also I think showing that just like men, women never totally grow up. There's always the inner child. And the creator of Barbie, Ruth Handler, not only reminds us that she named Barbie after her own daughter, but acts as a mother or grandmother to all the Barbies. Where Barbie as a movie excels, and I think also as a toy, that it defines mothers not by housekeeping and the labor of a mother, like the opening of the film does and like baby dolls do, but it creates women as a loving mentor and friend to their child. That's also beautiful, boy or girl. And I think that's a much healthier perspective on mothers. Ruth Handler even tells Barbie that while she's her mother, quote unquote, right, she can't control Barbie no more than she could control her real life daughter. Nobody controls women, not even their mothers. And this addresses a really interesting phenomenon that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and I think even not a lot of women are aware of. I think they do it subconsciously. This is something I had to learn in life, is that women are trained by society to have to ask for permission. Even sometimes from themselves, instead of just going for it, as soon as they have the inkling. And that's really important. So to include that in this movie, I thought was brilliant and important. As for the real world, Barbie has some other really wonderful moments as well. For instance, recognizing the beauty of women on the inside, as opposed to the superficial beauty that Barbie has represented for decades. Like the older woman at the bus stop, right? Or her scene with Ruth Handler, the ghost on the 17th floor of the offices of Mattel. Hilarious and brilliant and touching. And it shows that women can be powerful even from their kitchen table where Ruth Handler works. She doesn't have an office. They recreated her kitchen for her ghost office, right? Because I think that talks about sometimes, because women are often mothers, since that women have to multitask, that sometimes women do their work at home. But that doesn't mean they can't turn spaces that are typically thought of as a home space into also a workspace. I just think that's great, and that femininity isn't a weakness that should be apologized for or hidden or tried to be distanced from, but should be embraced because it has its own power and is powerful in and of itself. Isn't this amazing stuff? To me, Barbie shows that all women can be Barbie, and that Barbie not only encourages women to support each other, but to dream big and to see endless possibilities for themselves. Yet at the same time, and this is crucial, as America Ferrera states, sometimes all a woman wants is just to be able to feel good about herself inside and out, and that is a victory in and of itself. And that's also a really beautiful and important message. I think the movie is saying the same thing about Ken, by the way. These things that I'm describing can be applied to men and fathers. It's not something that's just for women, and particularly as society becomes a little bit more even-keeled and household duties start to be split in society. So I think that men also should be defined by their girlfriends, and they should be sure to also really see their girlfriends. I don't know if you saw a video that was going around on social media recently about husbands and boyfriends being interviewed about their wives and girlfriends and being asked what their girlfriends' or wives' middle names are, or their eye colors, or their birthdays, and these guys don't know. And I think that Barbie is addressing that, how it feels for the woman and maybe how the guy can do better. And so they can just have a healthier relationship. And let's not forget that at the end of the movie, Barbie apologizes to Ken. I mean, again, how can anyone say this is anti-men? Barbie actually apologizes to Ken, and I guess she says, "I'm sorry, I didn't see you." And that's interesting. And I think that's why, in this movie, Ken definitely sees Barbie. He very much sees Barbie. Perhaps because he was created to be a support to Barbie. Don't forget, Ken is a girl's toy. But that's amazing. The scene between Barbie and Ken really plays like a breakup, which is why I think it's so emotionally powerful. But a breakup that's painful, but also healthy, because both parties only want what's best for each other going forward. The sweatshirt he wears at the end of the movie, "I am Knuff," was just fantastic. And I gotta tell you, not only do I think a lot of guys would like that sweatshirt, but I've seen women DM me and tweet me that they would like to have that sweatshirt too, I think there's a real, blurring of the gender lines, not to do away with them and say everyone's the same, but to point out that, just like with other comparisons, between ethnicities and, economics, just humans, it's like we have similarities. Like we're different, but don't overlook where we also overlap. And I think that this movie's trying to make the point that it's the same for men and women. Now, yes, the movie makes a lot of jokes about guys, but they're not mean-spirited, and guys could make a lot of similar good-hearted jokes about women and have. Ken's Casa Dojo house that was a great joke. It looked like a fantastic man cave, and it sold really well in the real world, so I don't see what the problem is. The real world scenes, again, were fantastic. I thought the movie perfectly captured what it feels like for both men and women to just walk around. It was particularly Margot Robbie's sense of danger. And the way it was written and Margot Robbie delivered it, I thought it wasn't complaining. It was just stating a fact, which I have to tell you is quite true. The Century City sequence with Ken, though, was brilliant and hilarious, where Ken discovers the patriarchy. For those who don't know, Century City is a corporate neighborhood in Los Angeles full of skyscrapers and home to all the big talent agencies, as well as a number of other businesses. But it's home to all the big talent agencies, in particular CAA. And their tower, which they commissioned for themselves, is so imposing and such a monstrosity to some degree. I think it's kind of cool, of like glass and steel, that it's nicknamed the Death Star. It's so funny. So it's so great. And that's why when Ken later referenced Century City, particularly if you know the Hollywood business, it elicited a lot of laughs from my press screening. I thought this sequence not only demonstrated the patriarchy, but celebrated men, in my opinion, the true adult male version of Barbie Land. Only it's real because of the patriarchy. Women have to imagine a fantasy land like this, but here, guys actually grow up to have their playground. And Ken tries to recreate it with Kendom, but again, don't forget, it wasn't that the movie was making fun of Ken, but like Barbie, he is a child, so he recreates a childish version of this male fantasy world with the horses and the games and the movies and the fur coat, right? And don't forget that Ken couldn't get any jobs in the real world. Not because, again, it was making fun of men, but because he's a child. He hasn't gone to school yet, and that's exactly what he was told. He needed to go get the training. And it's very much like a child saying, "Oh, I want to do that job," and them saying, "Great, here's the path you have to take to get here." This is why a Ken spinoff movie is such a great idea, to see him find himself and get to grow up, right? And maybe he can meet other toys that are made specifically for boys. As I said, Ken is technically a girl's doll. A Ken movie where he maybe meets G.I. Joe? Give it to me now, I love it. Another powerful moment was at the offices of Mattel, where I think the movie went full Willy Wonka. From the hilarious and accurate depiction of corporate culture to Barbie asking what a lot of women sometimes wonder, at least to themselves, and that's why don't more women have positions of power in industries that specifically target women? And for all conservatives who are complaining about Barbie, I would point out to you that Will Ferrell's character is called out for hiding behind liberal talking points, claiming that he's doing good while not actually doing any good. Also at the Mattel offices, Barbie almost lets the male executive sweet talk her into willingly giving up her own power. That also, I think, is very much drawn from real life. That was amazing. And as those twist ties tightened, I think every woman could feel that sense of dread. And I think it was interesting to pair it with the familiarity of the twist ties that everybody knows and is such an innocent thing, but to show how it was literally tying Barbie down. But luckily, at the last minute, she escaped and made a run for it. I thought it was very, very funny when Will Ferrell says, wow, she really has to go to the bathroom because she was really hightailing it out of there. And then when Barbie at the high school runs into those girls, I think the movie highlights how teenagers can often go too far with the big ideas that they're only just discovering. You know, the extremism of being a teenager. I mean, calling Barbie a fascist, that was hilarious. It was so funny. I thought that was great. Another of my favorite sequences in the film is the I'm Just Ken musical number, with Ken not realizing that Barbie not liking him has nothing to do with him personally. The spark just isn't there. It's a funny song and it's a very sympathetic song because, again, this isn't something specific to men. Both men and women often take romantic rejection personally. And that's why I think everyone is connecting with this song. But this sequence actually shows how dynamic Ken is. He represents himself, interprets himself in very childish ideas because, again, he represents a child. But, you know, I think that from a more sophisticated standpoint, Greta Gerwig shows, you know, the dynamic aspects of men, from the Gene Kelly style dance sequence to the playtime battle on Malibu Beach. Again, underscoring that these are little boys. They have like a playtime battle, which is great. It's so many different ways to be masculine. Isn't that interesting? From Gene Kelly to like Braveheart. I think that's great. So many levels in this movie, as you can see. Also on that note, Greta Gerwig and her whole team have so many great visual gags here, from the battle on Malibu Beach, to Barbies getting ready in the morning with their fake playhouses and doing pantomime, to the hospital play set that opened up like a real Barbie toy. I'm so glad they saved that for the movie. I didn't have that ruined for me in advance. I hope you didn't either. To the way you travel from Barbie Land to the real world and back. I particularly loved when all the executives were on the tandem bike. That was just a delightful visual. All right, so let's talk favorite characters and be sure to share your own down below. Margot Robbie is Barbie, and while she's playing stereotypical Barbie, I'm glad that they not only addressed the classic Barbie look by calling her stereotypical Barbie, but that this Barbie, beyond that, is just a regular person. You know, Barbie has so many different things that she's accomplished, but not this Barbie, and I think that was important. She isn't super smart, she isn't super ambitious, and as she said herself, she's not a leader when she says, let's go find one of the other Barbies with leadership qualities. She is simply a kind person with a natural curiosity for life and others. And bottom line, that's what we should all aspire to. That should be the basics. And that's kind of what stereotypical Barbie is supposed to represent, the basic, right? And I think stereotypical Ken has those same qualities within him. Robbie's willingness to step down from the pedestal that the Hollywood machine has put her on and make herself more relatable, while at the same time still putting her best foot forward, I think is an incredible and powerful formula. I think it's really, really good. And it shouldn't be lost on us that Robbie produced or co-produced this film herself. And just like the male heartthrobs we've seen, who carve out a more interesting place for themselves in Hollywood once they have the power to do so, it's so great to see an actress do that. And not once her career has run out of steam, which is so often when both actors and actresses make this leap. Instead, Margot Robbie is doing this when she's arguably at the pinnacle of her career. She took a very big risk doing this, and I'm so happy to see that the box office is at least strong out of the gate, and it might make her career even stronger for doing so. So that's exciting. I'd like to see everyone associated with this movie rewarded for all the risks that they took, because Hollywood is notoriously risk-averse. So the fact that this movie even exists is a miracle. And I would like other studios and creatives and suits to be encouraged to also take risks. And they're only going to do that if they're making money taking risks. Then next up, Ryan Gosling as Ken. He is Ken as well. Gosling has long been a fan favorite, particularly with women, thanks to films like The Notebook and Crazy Stupid Love. Oh, so good. I didn't like The Notebook, but I loved Crazy Stupid Love, particularly his performance. And I think that quality makes him brilliantly cast, as I said. Also, that he comes from, in real life, a family with a strong wife, and he's a girl dad. So he's happy to play in Barbie Land and to help tell Barbie's story. He doesn't need it to be about him. But at the same time, he stays true and faithful to Ken and then makes sure that when Ken is being discussed, Ken gets his due, and that's very important. And again, some people are trying to say this movie is anti-men, but they don't realize just how sexy Ryan Gosling's Ken is, not just physically, but also emotionally and intellectually, which is a big part of appealing to women, as most people know who look into this stuff. All right, so anyway, and while Simu Liu got all the attention in the press campaign for this movie, I think because, of course, he's Shang-Chi, to me, within the film itself, Kingsley Ben-Adir was more in the vein of Ryan Gosling's performance. I feel he got it more and stood out himself for being funny, sweet, and admirable. I feel that going off of the growing up metaphor, these two Kens have the makings of sensitive, yet very masculine men. That was fantastic. Kate McKinnon does a fantastic job capturing the Barbie who's been played with too hard, which we've all experienced. And that's why her Barbie knows a little bit more, right? Because when you play with a Barbie too hard, what you're really doing is beginning to experiment as you start to express yourself and begin to grow up. That's the beginning stages when you're starting to first move away from Barbie. So that's why Weird Barbie is kind of like a tween and knows, as I said, more stuff. That's why she's the only Barbie to wonder what kind of plastic blob Ken is packing. I thought Will Ferrell was perfect as the CEO of Mattel, bringing elf energy to a movie that I think is certainly something of an homage to that. Many films, but there's definitely a little elf in this film's DNA as well. Some of you pointed that out, and I agree. And Rhea Pearlman, what a wonderful choice as Ruth Handler. They could have gone with the easier, more stereotypical choice of Helen Mirren, who I think is a better fit for the narrator. I liked Rhea Pearlman as Ruth Handler quite a bit. And I said that I said there was one other performance in my non-spoiler review that maybe could get an Oscar nomination. I could maybe see Rhea Pearlman, an argument being made for her work here. Now, Barbie is very diverse as a film, which I think has helped its appeal, but almost none of those characters are really front and center. I think there is enough screen time that it feels like authentic representation, although, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, particularly if you're from those groups. But if Barbie is successful enough, if this movie is successful enough, hopefully it will become a franchise that can expand and tell more stories. Although this is crucial, while maintaining its quality and striking the perfect balance of message and entertainment. That is extremely hard to do. Almost nobody can do it, that's why a lot of people, when they hear message movie, they roll their eyes. But this is a very rare message movie that also is incredibly entertaining. And that's why everyone here in front of and behind the camera deserves, I think, a lot of credit. So that's my spoiler review for Barbie. I'm so excited to hear your own thoughts down below. Be sure to subscribe. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.